Welcome to another episode of the magazine. Today we're here with Jim and Carole Mahaney. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Nice
you
to
for
be
having
here.
us.
So tell us some of your background. How did you get interested in photography?
Well, I think I started by working with Northeast Maritime Institute. We were working on their textbooks and the things they were using way back when.
Okay.
And I just found that I always needed a photograph of the rigging or some other aspect of what was going in their textbooks. So that's how it began.
Okay.
I then hooked up with some great people down the Cape who kind of molded my photography interest. And Carole's always been a second shooter from the get-go, so that's how we got involved.
That's great. What's some of your background for work?
Well, I was an educator for a full career, both here in Fairhaven, and I finished over at Normandin Middle School in New Bedford. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. But you weren't a photography teacher?
No, not at all, not at all. And Carole was a nurse, so
Oh, wow.
that was pretty far away from photography. Yeah.
So what kind of service do you offer in photography?
Well, it's really a philanthropic kind of
Okay, yeah.
episode. I try to make of it a business, but Carole keeps saying, "Oh, Jim will do that for nothing. Don't worry about it." But we enjoy that. That's what we like to do. But we started doing a lot of landscape and travel photography. But more recently, we're really interested in portrait photography. So if you have a corporate portrait or a headshot you need or anything of that nature, we've been working in that area.
Oh, wow, wow. So you're doing both then? You're doing, so
Yeah.
landscape. So what are some of the places that you've done in the South Coast area, taking photographs of?
Well, just about everywhere, I think. Have camera, will travel kind of thing. Trying to stick a lot with Fairhaven and certainly South Coast. But our hometown is special to us, so we do a lot of architectural things here and what everyone likes to see, and then we try to look for something that other people don't really take pictures of. So that's where we go with that, yeah.
Well, I have a great picture that you took of Fairhaven Town Hall hanging in my office. So
Thank you.
I see it every day, and it's a work of art.
That's great. Thank you very much.
So what are some of your favorite shoots?
Well, the most emotional one for us was during COVID. We had a young lady, Nadia Torres, who hadn't been to school for 2 years, and therefore, according to Mom, hadn't had a school photo taken. So she asked if I was still taking photographs, and I said, "Yes, I am, Samantha." So she stopped by with her daughter Sophia and Nadia and Jerry, her husband, and we set up our little studio here at church, and it was just a remarkable afternoon. She's just such a special person, special needs youngster, and she was wonderful with us, and it brought a tear to our eye working with that. Yeah, a shout out to the Torres family. That was so helpful. Sophia was holding backdrops for us, and
Oh, that's great.
it was just a wonderful experience.
That's a good story, throughout COVID here. But how did COVID affect your business?
Well, pretty much altogether. We stopped doing photos. We took advantage of it a little bit, I think, traveling around.
Traveled around and found different places, from here to P-Town, from here to New York, and no one was around.
Yeah, no one was on the road. Yeah.
No one's on the road, but we were able to expand into architecture and things like that, which
Oh, nice.
we enjoy too.
What are some of the unique things that happen with that? What some of the unique places actually?
Well, when we go to New York City, we like to people watch, and we're able to do people watch there. They just move so fast, which is nice. But then we did some really great architecture buildings, Flatiron Building and things like that. And very nice. Washington Square. It's good.
It's kind of a gambit of photography areas that we've worked on, but we're really focusing in on portraits and things in our local area. Yeah.
Great. And so, Carole, what's your breakthrough story here with photography?
Well, I've been following him for a long time. I stand behind him, but I've taken some pretty good shots that I've gotten some awards for. I'm sorry. And the biggest one for me was when we do work on occasion for Southcoast Almanac, and they sent us on an assignment to Factory 5 Racing in Wareham, and they were more than generous with our time. We were given free reign of the building and taking photos anywhere we wanted to. There were some spots you couldn't go to, but they were great. And we got some great shots, and we were in the magazine, and, we have a lot of photos in the magazine, don't we?
Yes, we do. I called the magazine because we submit to the magazine and they choose which photos they use.
Okay, yeah.
So they chose some of Carole's photos as well as mine. And I called and said, look, can you make sure that you put both Carole and I as the photographers for the event? She said, absolutely. And offered to put the name of the photographer by each and every photo in the article.
Wow.
And there were many of them. And I said, no, that won't be necessary. I said, just save yourself the work. And the real reason was she had more images chosen than I did. So we just kept it as
It was a great day.
It was a good day.
Yeah, it was a good day. But we like to go to the auto place in Newport, too, and take photos of the Audrains and Newport Car Museum and things like that,
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's fun.
And so you've been recognized then for your work.
Quite often. I have 2 covers with Southcoast Almanac and a couple of feature items there, like going down to Factory 5. We've both won ribbons, first place in art and beyond with Whaling City Camera Club. And through them, we compete at the regional, the New England level. And I've won a couple of black and white images there. And the Plymouth Photography's annual thing, I won a very nice award there. That was a little shock to me there. I said, geez, maybe I can do this, Yeah.
Well, I think you're doing it very well.
Oh, thank you.
So how would someone get in touch with you if they wanted to do a portrait or they wanted to have something, shot?
Yeah, well, we're really low-key, so if they would like to reach out on Facebook and get in touch with me that way, that would be the best way, or if they see us in town. We just signed up for a 50th class reunion of one of our Fairhaven High School groups, so we'll be doing that in the spring. So those kinds of things come up. People reach out, and so there's not a big. You can't go to my studio. My studio is on the road, so we can pretty much take this kind of a setup with us wherever we go. And First Congregational Church of Fairhaven has been wonderful with allowing me to use this as a studio when needed. So it's really nice.
You do a lot of volunteer work here.
We do. Oh, we do. Yes, we do. A lot of volunteer work in here. I volunteer him.
We shoot here at church often. I'm trying to do that a little more. We've been shooting the annual Hall of Fame dinner for the Fairhaven High School, and also doing any work. Bob Foster, the president of the Alumni Association, will give me a buzz, and we'll try to do anything that Bob needs. So usually we also put a calendar in with the community nurses. So we submitted some images for that. And
very nice.
By all means, yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So what lies ahead, do you think?
What lies ahead? We don't do weddings. No, we've tried that on a small scale, but that's okay. But anything anybody wants, we'll definitely find a place wherever they want to have it done. We'll go there, and we do a lot of philanthropy and just.
I find it's important. You look back at photographs, and there's a history there. There's an emotion there, and there's a great deal of things that people will hold dear in the future. That's pretty much what we're looking for. If you can look at our work, and there's some emotion that comes from your looking at our work,
okay,
we're doing the right thing then.
Sure. You've had some of those emotional kind of draws with your photography. Can you describe one of them?
Well,
or many.
Yeah, many. Well, one in particular was an early image of a harbor. I'm just going to slip my mind now. Quissit Harbor, and it came out really, really nice. And you never know with photography; it has to strike the viewer. And so, as far as sales and things of that nature, but this one woman stopped by and paid me a pretty substantial amount of money to get started, and it was where they used to tie their boat up.
Oh, okay.
So there was a connection with this, because Quissit's a beautiful harbor anyway, and that's usually the connection. So talking with folks and find out what they do, what's their favorite hobby, and we kind of incorporate those kinds of things into the shoot.
Okay, all right. So it makes it very personal.
Yeah, try to, yeah.
Any other shots when you were driving through the roads of Maine or anywhere?
Oh, Maine, I got my group up in New Hampshire when we pulled over, and I took a whole row of the motorcycles, and
We heard them coming up Bear Notch.
I stopped them all just to get the photo.
Said, come on over, and they all parked and
It worked out quite
posed,
well.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm not afraid to talk to anybody, so I usually jump in.
So you have some fun photos too.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
obviously,
yeah, yeah. We do, yeah. No, we enjoy it, Yeah.
What do you think the best photo that you've taken so far?
Personally, my own photo that I've taken, I think my, the one I won the award with the violin.
Violins,
That one struck
a
me.
series of violins on the wall hanging at a violin shop. And Carole talked to the owner of the shop and said, would you mind if we took some photos? And she did, and she won first place and also photo of the year.
Photo of the year for that one, yeah. And I'm giving that to someone soon. I did it for a purpose, and I haven't been able to work it out yet, but yeah, give it to him.
What about you, Jim?
Geez, there's a lot, but there was the one emotional one was we lost a wonderful guy from the camera club, Jose, and when Jose passed, I had already snuck him in here to the studio to take some shots, and I had several of him on shoots that he and I have gone out to. He was a real close photography buddy, and he died during COVID.
Oh, geez, I'm sorry.
So the family got in touch with me and asked me if I had any photos of Jose, and I said, well, of course. And we sent them in, and they all made, not only did they use it because you couldn't go out or anything during COVID, so they did something online, and they had a session there. They've used it, a radio station in Boston
Okay.
used it and put that in their advertising about Jose. He was a real unionist kind of guy
Oh, wow.
and worked at UMass Dartmouth in the labor area. So, so those were some of my favorites. And the ones that I took of Jose here, actually, he loved the black and white version. Kind of looked like a Che Guevara look to it, yeah. So, that's the one that really strikes me as the most fond one that I've shot so far.
And that one there is spread all over because they made T-shirts out of it.
They did. They
Yeah.
made
So it's traveled.
T-shirts, yeah.
It's,
And they're from Puerto Rico to New Bedford. They're everywhere around
Well, your
town.
work is being displayed everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
Well, I can't thank you both enough for your time and your talent that you bring to our community, and keep on clicking.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Charlie. We
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
so much
Thank you.
for having us.
Welcome back to the magazine. Today we're here with Ron Fortier. Welcome, Ron, to our show.
Thank you.
We're going to hear about your talents. So tell us about some of your talents that you bring to our community.
Well, I've always been an artist. I was very much exposed to the arts when I was a kid in New York City. My mother left with me to go to New York to pursue a singing career. She was a father singer.
Okay.
And we lived on the Upper East Side with her uncle, and then we moved on down to the West Side to Columbus Avenue. So I really got in those 7 years time, I got a real life education.
Sure.
But the uncle was really crazy about the arts, and it seemed like every single day we'd go to a museum or a gallery or whatever. And so I ended up getting my BFA from the SMU, Southeastern Massachusetts University.
Okay.
It's still hard to say, UMass Dartmouth. And from there I went to the University of Miami for my MFA in painting. And well, with the economy being the way it always was with my generation, like I said, my high school graduating class, I ended up going into advertising and marketing.
Okay.
While I was at Miami, a couple of the guys there were retired advertising people, and they had to get their MFA to teach. So they taught me some tricks, and I ended up doing that as a backup. And then got to a point, I owned my own advertising agency, actually 2 of them, and did consulting work. And then I got to a point where I decided I'm going back to painting, so I went back to painting. And in 2016, after a divorce, I moved to Portugal.
Okay.
And just set up a studio there. Nice. And I decided, this is great. I'm going to be painting and living in a beautiful place. And but before I left, a woman that I had interviewed for my friend Jeff Watton, another Fairhaven resident,
Yes, yeah.
He's a co-founder of Spectrum Marketing Group. He asked me to interview this woman to replace the graphic designer that went on to start his own business. And long story short, there was no buzzers and bells and violins or fireworks or anything, but in the time that I had left to go to Portugal, I was like, oh gosh, I didn't expect this. So anyway, we got married, and she's a graphic designer, and she's still working for Jeff, and she's been a great partner, and she's also encouraged me to change my direction. I was an abstract painter.
Okay.
And she said, you've got a lot of stories to tell, and I think you're kind of hiding behind the abstract work. You're hiding some emotions. And so I started doing that, and wow, what a turnaround.
What year was that?
It was actually around the pandemic. I'd always been fascinated. My dad was a janitorial contractor in the city of New Bedford, Roland's Clean Sweep Janitorial Service. Mm-hmm. One of his accounts was Charles S. Ashley Insurance, Charles S. Ashley and Sons Insurance. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they subsidized or underwrote the New Bedford Arctic Whaling Expedition of 1871, which turned into the New Bedford Arctic Whaling Disaster of 1871, nothing to laugh at.
No.
40 New Bedford vessels were stuck in the ice, crushed and sunk. And they have these great lithographs, because the insurance companies back then, whenever there's a disaster, they always made lithographs out of them. And I remember cleaning the offices with him, and I was always mesmerized by it. And I thought, what would it feel like to be on a vessel? You can't move. You're cold, but at least you can stay warm, and then you can hear the moaning and groaning and crushing the timbers. And okay, so you build a tent on the ice, but what do you do after that? So it was always like this thing. Sure. And so I started doing that, and then her sister was doing a podcast it's called Daughters Dialogue. Her sister is the first African-American woman admitted into the Daughters of the American Revolution. Okay. And she was telling a story about their third great-grandmother. Then don't know their name, her name. All we know is that her daughter, along with her sister, so 2 of the girls were sold away from her. And the story was passed down to her grandmother. And it was Charity Ann. Mm-hmm. And I decided then and there I wanted to try to illustrate how could you do that. Mm-hmm. And she even has the last words to her daughters before they were taken away. Bye-bye, my babies. I'll see you in the by and by. She was so resigned that she would never see them again, that she would see them in the hereafter. Right. And it was pretty painful. So I started doing that, and then one thing led to another, and I basically have now become a painter of hidden history and family tales.
So it all tells a story.
It all tells a story, exactly, yeah.
And you've caught the eye of a local writer, too, Don Wilkinson.
Yes, who called me the unabashed chronicler of tragedies. I think that was the quote from Don. He put it together pretty interestingly. He said, my mother being a fatherless singer, father was about rejection, yearning, loneliness. It's right. The Portuguese blues, basically, as people would refer to it. But I think it's Portuguese opera, which also has the same elements. Opera is always about unrequited love or whatever. And so he said, after all, I am the son of a father singer. So painting all this misery has actually made me happier.
Happier. Interesting.
Paula, my wife, would say when I was doing abstract work that I was, it's like, well, you're never happy about anything that you do. You're always like, because to me it was a very serious thing. It was like, it was very intellectual. Abstract art is not just throwing paint on a canvas. There's so much more to it. It's about composition and such. And the ultimate goal of the abstract artist is insane. It's to paint nothing, that's why you keep doing it. It's like looking for Sasquatch.
Yeah.
So I was always trying to figure out ways of getting around that. And I ended up, going off in this little foray based on a painting, an old painting I did back in the 80s of the Arctic whaling disaster. Yeah. And she's like, see? The weird thing is that I'd never gotten the kind of reaction from my work before. Well, Steve Remick, a friend and a phenomenal painter from Dartmouth, and I had an exhibit at the Dartmouth Cultural Center in 2020, I think it was. And he went from landscape painting to doing COVID healthcare workers, these nurses with, they look like they're death warmed over with tape, scars from the tape, and it was just a miserable, miserable existence for these healthcare people, the guardian angels, so to speak. And he and I did this dual show, and people were, what they saw with his work was easy to understand, and they looked at my work, and you could tell that, the heads were sort of cocked. I did the Greenwood Massacre, America's Guernica, Greenwood, the Black Wall Street Massacre. And people were sobbing. I mean, Steve's like, I never thought we had to bring tissues to one of our openings until now. But I'm not out to preach. I'm just out to point.
Sure.
That kind of thing.
So getting into the post-pandemic area here now, it really did change your art. And what have been some of your other major work?
I did a triptych, a grant-funded triptych called Children of a Common Creator, Deathless Spirits. It's based on chapter 87 of Moby Dick. And I thought, hey, born and bred New Bedford, right. I'd eventually have to take a bite of the Moby Dick apple, so to speak. And the triptych is 12 foot wide. And basically it shows, the scene shows nursing whales under the water, and you see the Pequod on the left. And then on the right, you see Queequeg Lansing, a whale who's nursing, who just gave birth. And that's the horrible thing. You can't tell the difference between the umbilical cord and the bloody lance line, from the harpoon. Yeah. But there's a lot of the violence of the industry, the two different worlds, the them and the us. Now we're a little bit more environmentally conscious. They're all hard subjects, but. And they're not just historical. I mean, I've got paintings planned. In fact, the next one that's going on the easel now is my dad, when he was in Canada, who never ever thought he'd come back to the United States until somebody said he had to return to register for the Korean War, for the draft. And he ended up meeting my mother and marrying her, and that didn't turn out well, but he ended up staying down here. So, it's stories.
Sure.
It's stories. Yeah.
So for some of the budding artists that will be watching the show, what is a South Coast Artist Index?
Oh, the South Coast Artist Index is something that Jeff and I, when Jeff and I first met, we hit it off together right away. He's a few years younger than my daughter, and we just started talking about this, that, and the other, and he said something, and I said, I've got a clipping from Mary Jean Blasdale, who's the former curator of the Whaling Museum. She's the one that wrote the Directory of New Bedford Artists, and I thought it would be great if that could be continued. So this is pre-pandemic that we had another economic downturn, and we started building something called the artist profile. And then we came back with the index, and long story short is we've recorded over 140. We've just released, actually 150. We've just released number 137 this week of visual performing, literary, and we're going back to culinary because Don Wilkinson said you got to bring the culinary artists back.
Sure.
And so we're working in cooperation with the New Bedford Whaling Museum. They've put these podcasts into their database, which will be there in perpetuity. So we're dealing with contemporary, meaning living artists. We've done dead artists. We've had people speaking for them, obviously, but we want more people like that. There are so many artists that have gone by. And we want to document them. And so between the podcasts and the articles that we write, it's a collective digital archive.
Okay.
Focusing on the creative community of the South Coast.
So how can someone get involved with that?
All they have to do is go on theartistsindex.com, and that's TheArtistsindex.com. And check out the site, and then under contact you'll see a drop down. It'll say inquiry form, and then just tell us what you're thinking, how you want to be involved. Are you searching? You have something to share, because that's what we're looking for, people to share their stories. And or are you a contemporary artist who wants to be on the podcast?
Excellent. Well, Ron, thank you for sharing your story with our community, and
Thank you
for all the great talent that you bring to our community.
Thank you. I much appreciate it.